Hey there, I am David Souther, and I have a laser pointer, which always makes me happy. Maybe, does it show up? Turn it on, there we go. Is anybody at WebPerf Days at Google in August? Colt McCandless stood up, web performance expert, stood up in front of everybody, and he had just flown in from Palo Alto. And he goes, or Mountain View, he goes, "Y'all are really well dressed out here in New York." And we all kind of look around ourselves and we kind of look like this. I was wearing jeans and this jacket at the time. We go, "Yeah, we are, aren't we? It's kind of nice to be in New York." Anyway, davidsouther@gmail.com. You can find me most places there. I am a Google Plus user more than the other ones. You can throw tomatoes at me if you want. And I'm here to talk to you about how we can save the internet. The internet is under attack. Everybody loves kittens. But look at all of this prawn. There's so much prawn on the web. So what I want to do is I want to keep the kitten searches high because our websites work well, and the prawn searches low because they don't know how to test. This entire talk really is an allegory at making products that work well and that are well tested as you go through and use them. Next, please. So the next campaign for testing things, so we want to test the kittens, the next campaign in the war against prawn is testing the kittens' sites. We're going to test place kittens. We're going to test kitten wars. We're actually not going to test these because I didn't get around to writing the code, but we're going to see about how we could test them and how we would test them. For our weapons, we have Selenium and Cucumber. Cucumber JS fork is going to be very, very imperative for us to use as we go forth and write behavioral tests. Something like this. This is a trivial example. Does this work on the screen? It really doesn't. That's too bad. So a cucumber test is a very human-readable way to describe an interaction with a website. In this case, we're doing place kittens. I have my browser open. This is a step. This is a precursor, regular three-step testing. I go to placekittens.com. I should see blank kitten. I want to make sure that there's one large kitten at place kittens, a couple of medium kittens, 3 small kittens, and 2 tiny kittens. This is the default layout of their site. And these are all good things to have. If I can find my mouse. We're going to do this by hand. So we have our browser open, right? When we go to placekitten.com, we should see 1 large kitten. What do we say? 2 medium kittens, another 2 small kittens, and, 3 small kittens and 2 tiny kittens. Does the site work? Do we know that our product continues to work? Once that test runs in an automated fashion, yes, we do. Over Selenium, we know that unit testing is really good. Feature testing is better. We now have 2 steps of test to go. But what I really want to explore through the rest of this discussion is whether there's something that's even better, something that's absolutely amazing as far as testing goes. And you've got a hint about this. This would be these machine-readable feature tests. We're going to see something really cool that we can do with them in a bit. Also, we want to run Selenium on all of our browsers. Every single browser that we support, IE 8, if we have to, because we have a website that works in China, all the way back to IE 6. Is that possible? Can we do that? Yes, we can, and it's going to be really cool when we do. This is all going to be in selenium-webdriver JS. Why do you ask that? Or why do we choose that, you ask? We want to build single-page web applications. I'm a JavaScript guy who's been in the web on the front end only since I got out of PHP about 4 years ago. I really like it when I don't have to continually have a page refresh, when things are snappy, smooth, I can keep scrolling forever and probably not get anything done because I'm just keep scrolling down Reddit trying to find more cat pictures. Single-page apps are great. Given that I write single-page web apps, and many of my colleagues do as well, there's a lot of JavaScript experience. Moving into the Node world provides more JavaScript experience. So because we're so proficient in JavaScript, we don't want to have to learn Python, Ruby, Java, the other languages for testing stuff. If we can keep this all in the family within a JavaScript team, that will be nice. So we're going to be looking at Selenium-webdriver JS through the course of this talk. This is an official Selenium project. This is the same Google and community support that the rest of Selenium has, so we don't need to worry about diving into some third party that they might give up. This is the JavaScript version of the same Selenium that you've been using with Ruby, Python, Scala, However, to get there, we do need to take a short little interlude through JavaScript. Show of hands, who's familiar with JavaScript? A little over half of you. And so I'll try to go through this pretty quick. We know that Selenium protocol commands are asynchronous, right? You take your command, you make the request to the Selenium hub, or the Selenium driver from your testing code. It does its work in the browsers and it sends that back. There is a problem because JavaScript is single-threaded. JavaScript can't do that sort of asynchronous request. What we do then is, to handle that, we have our asynchronous call. We do our method, we request our method, and we give it a function to call after the asynchronous event has completed. That function, generally, in the node world especially, takes the first parameter as error, and then it can take many success parameters. That's all right. It works. However, it does become unmaintainable pretty easily. If you look at some intermediate level to lower HTTP calls in jQuery, there's some uncomfortable code. It gets a little bit big and heavy, and it becomes very hard to maintain which success handler is going where. There are a lot of really good alternative solutions, and we'll see those in a bit. This is that Christmas tree I was talking about. Driver.get callback, driver.find callback, another async call callback. We have, it's easier to count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 callback functions that we're trying to maintain in some way. Woohoo! Climb the Christmas tree. So instead in JavaScript, we've come up with this notion of promises or futures in some other specs. What we're going to do is we're going to, in some point in the future, we're going to have a result. These become chainable and very clean, much more maintainable. They still finish on a later cycle. They take a pair of functions. Instead of that one function that took an error and all of the success results, we just take one function for the success, one function for the failures. The success function is handled when it is successful. Surprise. The failure function is called when the asynchronous call did not complete correctly. In the lingo, that's called resolved and rejected. The entire point of promises that you don't get from callbacks, besides the simpler architecture and easier to pass these callbacks in, is that they really give you a way to do try-catch-finally in an asynchronous block of code. You suddenly don't need to have global variables or scope variables that are managing all of these error states. You can just do this. This looks a little bit more page model style. Try loading the web app. That completes synchronously. Try loading the login. Completes synchronously. But we can't do synchronous code in JavaScript, so instead we do this. Load the web app, then log in, then open the user preferences, then change the password. Then, if anything in here fails, call this last function, but only if anything has failed, and then you can see that we finally log the exception. In WebDriver.js itself, this is what they're going to look like. The driver object that Google provides is actually this really neat queued promises handler in and of itself, so while you can use .then, you can also just keep chaining off of the driver method. So driver, get me google.com, driver, get the queue named element and send keys WebDriver, that's the big search box in Google. Find element, button G, that's the big Google button click, or the big search button. .click, perform an action on it. And so you can really see that up to this point, we're kind of doing a regular three-step setup, execute, and finally get title. This is you see the then function here, takes a title on success, do the assertion. Pretty standard, pretty good testing. Alright, that's the last I have to say about JavaScript specifically. Good to keep an eye on. We're going to talk about Cucumber itself now. And Kitten is really curious about what those cucumbers are doing in there. What we want to do, so we know that feature testing is good, or unit testing is good, feature testing is great, but what we want to do is we want to have another level of testing that's behavior, and this is my goal, and we'll get to this a little bit more in a minute, is that I don't want to, as a developer, write these because I don't necessarily know what a good feature is. I know what I think a good feature is, but I don't know what you think, or you think, or you think a good feature is. I want feature writing, This feature part of test writing can be so easy that little puppy could take care of it. And Cucumber.js is going to give us this. We have a step. When I go to placekittens.com, this I want somebody else to write. I've got a step definition, some regular expression that has a little arrow, or sorry, a little section to capture a parameter. Take this in a function, this.world.visit URL, then done. What does that really mean? Well, that is the world definition, and it does this code. World.prototype.visit is a function that takes a URL. This.driver, we are now dealing with a Selenium driver, as in any with almost the same, except for the callbacks API, as any of the other drivers that you're dealing with in your Java, your Scala realm. We tell it to visit the URL. It returns a promise, like I mentioned. When that promise completes, .then, we'll call our done function, which tells the Cucumber test framework that this step has completed, and we can go on to whatever the next thing is. As we remember, that would be looking for a large kitten picture. So I want somebody else to write this so that I can take care of having written this once, and then I can just go in and if this step fails, I can go in and iterate on that in my code to implement the next feature. Where's my mouse? Here it is. Okay. Here we go. This then is what I want somebody else to write. And this is a little kitten. The kitten wants to trip the kitten's person. Cats do that a lot. So there's one time that he wants to be able to trip his owner when the owner is carrying groceries. When my human is in the driveway, given my human is in the driveway, again, setup, we know that the world is this way. When I lay on the front door, the kitten's going to go in front of the front door and lay down. And then my human will trip on me, step on its own, and he will drop his groceries. Groceries are now on the floor. We can write a test that asserts whether the groceries are now on the floor. Here's another one. He wants to trip his owner, trip his person in the middle of the night. Given the human has just woken up, when I beg for food, and cat goes over and sits down and the owner gets confused, bangs his foot on the table, and will curse. Again, we can write programmatic steps for each one of these individually, small, isolated, and composable, so that, given my human has just woken up, when I beg for food, well, what if I want to go over and beg for favorite mouse? Then he will sigh in adoration and give me my favorite mouse. This step, while the beg step is still the same, we can parameterize this pretty well. But it still reads like something that a salesperson could do. So I have this as a real problem at my day job. We have a lot of times that sales will go out to a client. We have a great product, a great platform, show our platform, that's amazing, but what about feature X? That's really what we need to sign up. And if you can't algorithmically amortize the fizz bar on the boo bang, then we can't use your product. And they say, oh yeah, we'll have that done, we've got that on the roadmap, 40 days, 20 days. When that is, 500 lines of algorithm, plus testing, plus user interface, plus. Sales, with this Cucumber format, is going to go back and say, awesome, we're going to give you your whatever you just said, and they're going to write out a feature test in this feature language that we've just talked about, and say, here, this is what you want, we've talked about it in English, this could go into a contract if it needed to, and then they're going to come back and bring that to us, they're going to be, awesome, we're going to give them this. The developers are going to say, wow, that's really cool, 6 months. That's a lot of work, 6 months. Signatures, done. Now, as a developer, we can just take that and we know exactly what will happen for their feature, not their code, not their unit, but their actual desired behaviors on our platform to be what they want. Customer support can do this. Customer support can say, hey, this used to be working, but now this test, or now this thing that we had said would work, this edge case doesn't work. They write the same sort of behavior test, and then we see the behavior that causes an edge case, and we fix that, and now, again, we're happy, they're happy, we don't have the little chicken scratch of, well, if I'm sitting this way on my head and I'm doing this, then I slam my head over here, and it breaks. Okay, write that in our Cucumber tests, and then we'll test that. We're happy because we don't have to guess anymore what people are asking for us. We don't have to divine or intuit or figure it out. We just implement the feature test in front of us, and if we don't have time for all of them, we just have a very clear, straightforward backlog for all of our sprints. So that's really good. That's a big win in my book. So now we're in this magical world of ponies and money because we get this all done. I haven't actually tried this yet. We've been implementing the framework for this over the last couple of months. We are going to start training a few people at our company beginning of next year, so 3 or 4 weeks from now. We're building the training materials right now. We're really excited about it. The CTO nearly gave bonuses early after we talked about it. He wasn't that excited, but he's pretty excited. So yeah, hopefully we can replace our entire sales team with the little puppy again. That'd be really cool. We don't need sales, we just need a puppy to write these because they're so easy to write. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I've been talking about using Cucumber.js to drive selenium-webdriver. I'm going to talk a little bit about the other libraries and utilities that kind of provide some support beyond what the 2 vanilla libraries do. One of them is Cucumber. Straight Q is the name of an asynchronous library that has gotten really popular in the JavaScript world. You might have noticed when I was doing the Cucumber.js stuff, there was a callback, that done callback, to tell us that it was finished. What Q does is just provides a nice little promises layer on top of the steps. A step can return something and it passes. It throws an exception in any test that throws an exception, similar to JUnit and all the other unit testing frameworks. Now throw an exception and it fails. And finally, the step itself can return a promise that when that promise finishes, like the asynchronous WebDriver test for click stuff, will also work. So there's cool stuff on top of some of these libraries. An experimental feature that I'd like to play with, this is actually a library of my own that I'd really like to see where it can go. Those aren't kittens, those are otters. Take a jQuery-inspired API, and this really wouldn't be as much for the sales guys as for the regression test guys, but what I want to do is I want to see if there's a step definition right on top of it. However, as we might all remember, you Rails guys are still really arguing over whether web steps is a good thing or not, so I'm a little bit tentative myself. I don't actually know if there are any Rails guys in here. So if you want to talk about this, I'd love to talk about this afterwards. Is this useful? Is it beneficial? The web steps removal argument is that it leads to really bad tests because they're so brittle and tied to the JS, but they're really useful in terms of writing tests quickly. I don't know. It seems like it's an open question, and I haven't seen anyone talking about it in the JavaScript world. It's really only the Rails conversations that I've seen on this, so that's something that I would really like to talk about. Next thing to talk about is the WebDriver drivers. You can change capabilities, change WebDriver, change how you're using your driver. Right now I just use normal stuff, normal WebDriver. You tell it where the local WebDriver hub is when you're running the Selenium jar. It hooks up to that, it's good to go. There is a protractor driver. It wraps the regular driver and extends a bunch of AngularJS specific things. So there's movement in here. I don't know, JP, not to get you off your phone, but do you know if the Ember guys are doing anything like this? Any special testing frameworks or whatnot?
So they already have, basically they have options within Ember to turn it into a way that will easily integrate with Karma and other things.
Yeah.
They don't have a separate project for it.
Okay, yeah. So Protractor is another project in the Angular ecosystem. Ember does this. There are a lot of ways to take what Google has and add on top of that, or what Selenium has, add on top of that, and build really cool stuff specific for your things. There's a theoretical one that I've seen and heard about called Zombie. Zombie is a pure JavaScript headless web browser. It's kind of really weird because they're running JavaScript and JavaScript, and they're doing all the DOM stuff. It gets really complicated really fast, and they're not quite alpha ready yet. But presumably, any of these you could easily change to make it work like that. And finally, Remember that first question I asked, can we test in all the browsers? Yes, we can. BrowserStack has their own driver that works for WebDriver.js. In fact, it is as easy to do in a grunt configuration file as changing one enumeration, and it just works as long as you provide your username on the environment. So, boom, done. Local development running against a local Selenium launcher. Once you go to your continuous integration, turn on, switch to the BrowserStack version, you have full matrix testing of your entire test suite that all of your developers and all of your sales guys and all of your regression QA folks put together. Next time, well, we won't have any more clients screaming that it doesn't work in IE9, and that is going to be a very nice lift off of our chest, and I hope that will work for you as well. That's it. That's my discussion of running Selenium and Cucumber together in the JavaScript world. It's not talked about much yet. A lot of these are still kind of being discovered in the last couple of years. We don't have, in my field, in the JavaScript field, the level of discussion that I see a lot of others having. There we go. So yeah, Selenium is obviously a win. Cucumber, I hope it can deliver, and I am really curious about the web steps discussion, whether it's a good thing or not. So thank you very much. Little Bub thanks you too. This entire, you can't read that down there.
And minus.
And minus. Sorry, this entire presentation is going to be available at souther.co/kitten testing. It is not up yet. I will put it up tomorrow after maybe getting some feedback. Where is my mouse? There we go. Okay. Aha. There we go. Yeah, I'll have to edit the slide to fix that. Thank you.
Question?
Yeah, sorry, questions. I was going to wait for beer.
How mature are the JavaScript library that's supposed to like Java or Perl or some of the other language frameworks available for Selenium?
The Google repository, the Google API is exactly the same, except that they have the promises returns instead of returning the value. So all of the method names are the same as WebElement, all of the behaviors are what you'd expect from WebElement, and the other methods, you saw me use driver.visit as the method that you call to go somewhere. Again, the only difference is that instead of returning that value, it returns a promise to call for doing the next step. Anything else? Yeah.
Why did you choose Cucumber? Is this mainly because you have like a Java framework that you guys do it all the time, or?
No, I chose it entirely for the natural language aspects. Because when I wanted to try this on sales guys for a while, and we're at a place where we can, and the other developers and the management and leadership think that that's also a good idea. I would like to try that. So it was entirely because of the plain English testing descriptions. Yeah?
To add on to that, what alternatives are there to Cucumber? Because I only know a few. So when it came to making that decision-making process, what other contenders are there in that group?
Vanilla Node. You can just call the API steps as you want and use your own thing. You can put. So back up a couple slides. I had the three-part slide: the step definition, and the world definition. That's a three-step process, like two layers of abstraction boundary. The first layer is that Cucumber description, and that could be any plain English thing. We chose a machine-readable plain English format. You could do that in comments in any code that you wanted. You could do that in an XUnit style description. You could do that in a Jasmine BDD description. So that's pretty much whatever you want. That and the step function kind of work together. The step definition kind of work together. Then there's that abstraction layer to the actual, I call it world, but the actual driver part that actually communicates with Selenium. So you can change out whatever you want at any one of those abstractions. They're in no way tied to each other. So again, you could use Jasmine, Mocha, we use Cucumber, plain Node, anything you want there.
So
yeah.
The influence of going with Cucumber is it an inclusiveness that you want participation from other people on the team for creating plain language tests, or what's the motivation
Yeah, the motivation is very much communication among team members, because a comment in Node you can make plain English. Description in a BDD test, a Jasmine or Mocha test, plain English. There's nothing specific about that. The fact that Cucumber must be machine readable means that you have to agree on, sorry, by machine readable I mean we have those regular expressions that say only these things are valid steps. If you don't have a regular expression that matches one of the lines in the Cucumber test, it's not machine readable for Cucumber. So that means that as a team and as a company, in our case, at least as a division, we have to all agree on a ubiquitous language for our project. We can't just go off and say, well, I use this word, which is slightly different from that word, but they obviously mean the same thing. No, they don't. They have to be the same word, and we all have to have an agreed upon way to talk to each other. So communicate.
So something I came across is when you're on a team where you're not, where when you present it, everyone thinks it's a great idea, but you're not getting a lot of participation. I start to find that Cucumber may have been high overhead.
Okay.
So would you agree that if you're not getting the participation, that you should maybe simplify your framework?
Yeah, at that point, you will definitely need to go back and reevaluate.
Like just using RSpec was not, well, this is using Ruby, but using RSpec is much simpler and elegant, because just creating a Cucumber style tests seem like extra overhead and creating extra work for if one person is doing most of the work. It just seemed like extra work that wasn't necessary.
Yeah, hopefully that wouldn't. I can see how a team would come to that. Hopefully, because management at our firm is so interested in it, like legitimately they do think that that will be a benefit. It won't be one person writing the test. It will be spread out across the interested parties, across the shareholders. There needs to be a lot of give back from the developer side, and a lot of understanding from the developer side that they need to make flexible and appropriate Cucumber tests, and hear the feedback from the development and from the non-technical staff. And they also definitely need to do a fair amount of training to show what's going on, why is this important, what benefit will sales get from us doing this. In our case, sales will get the benefit of not overselling and not have to go back in 3 months saying we can't give you that feature.
So communicating specs is a huge win for what you've implemented.
Yes, but I don't see RSpec as being opposed to that. We chose Cucumber, and I would not be offended if Cucumber was too much and we had to go with something else. The idea was that communication. Yeah?
How do you communicate the results to the interested parties? I know that like Scala tests, like you get a nice report, like anyone can look at it and drill into it and get a fair understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, we have, today our platform is using a dot reporter, so it just prints out dots for every step to complete for development locally, and any failures have their nice failure report. On our continuous integration server, we're doing JUnit reports, so that every build that gets to continuous integration, which is every commit to master, when we merge into master, gets a build, it gets a JUnit report, and then you can see very quickly how this fits. What?
Is that Jenkins?
Everybody understands JUnit XML now. We're using Bamboo because we have a ridiculous Atlassian license, which is ridiculous for many reasons. But that's a beer talk. What?
That's the least of which is it?
The least of which. Yeah, it's interesting. Anything else?
So feel free to tell me if this is a question that is too granular, but I'm wondering how, or not, but it would take too long to explain basically, but how do you foresee the the writing of these tests as being granular enough for sales to actually make like budgets on, make pricing on? Like, how do you get to, I have not written a Selenium test in a very long time. How do you get from, or a Cucumber test rather, go to Google, type in David Souther, click enter, Google result, like that, is that actually actionable, or and how do you try to find that middle ground?
Yeah, like I said, we haven't done it yet, so
or how are you expecting?
How I expect to do it is that there will be a fair amount of give and take on what it is. What I expect will happen is that we will end up finding ourselves with a larger, like, I expect we will find ourselves implementing something that looks very similar to page model object. Thank you. I expect we will find ourselves implementing something like page object in Cucumber. We'll choose, we'll have a few keywords that mean, log in. A lot of steps go on in log in. With the Google example, I expect we will end up seeing Cucumber. Search Google for phrase. That would then be implemented by that step. Go to Google, type in this into the box, click the button, do the search. So I think it'll be about halfway. They'll say the higher level things to the granularity that they'll need, and that would not include actual browser stuff. We will then go in and have step definitions that do the granular stuff. And so there will probably be about equal amounts of code for either side of one of those.
It's hard to see without knowing any given domain.
Yeah.
Like the next step is gigantically complicated. Like what is the next one? Get devintether.com in the case of someone already writing a website. Like the.
Yeah. Well, so that one. I mean. Oh yeah.
I really want to see. I want to see another talk in Q3 of this year, of 2014, see how this is successful. Because I would love.
If you want to invite me back, I would really like to do that. That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll say one thing on writing good Cucumber. It's no different than writing good specifications. You're writing acceptance criteria, and acceptance criteria is agreed to between business and engineering. If you write good acceptance criteria, you're expressing it in Cucumber, sure, it's just a text file. But the problem that you're having is that sales is selling things that haven't been agreed to as a specification.
Yep.
All you're doing is
Yep.
writing it down in a shared location that's agreed upon, and then taking that and implementing executable actions from each one of those specifications. And like, yeah, you're going to specify it in WebDriver, sure.
Yeah.
That's what good Cucumber is, just well-written specifications.
That's what I'm shooting for. Yeah.
Maybe we work on different kinds of projects, but and we have different sales teams because I'm trying to imagine getting them to work in Cucumber. It's kind of entertaining. But assume for the moment that like they're on board. They're cool with the idea. I'm trying to imagine, like, it seems like for them that they would not be able to do the other parts of their job, the amount of Cucumber writing they would need to do in order to put all the features in.
Yeah. Again, the hope is that we will be able to come to a point where we can agree on some intermediate level so that it's not too much for them to write, but yet it is still enough. So, as the gentleman was saying, it's a good spec. If they don't have enough time to write a good, someone's going to have to write that spec. Whether it's the spec that ends up in the code that's not what they wanted, implementation is a spec. If we don't have an actual spec on top of that, like we are at right now, then whatever. Hopefully we will be able to convince them that this is actually in their best interest as well, that they will be able to sell more, better, and know that it is going to be implemented, instead of wondering why 2 days after they put the spec on our CTO's desk, it hasn't been done, and it was due the day they put it on his desk. So there's a lot of issues that we're working on there. Yes. Yes, we do have different sales teams, it sounds like. Hopefully. I would like to transform my sales team into the one that I've described.
I mean, to a certain extent, I feel like if you're a salesperson, if you don't have time to write a spec, you don't have time to make a sale.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the obnoxious way of putting it.
I was trying to refrain from that, but yes.
But I agree.
But yeah, there are. In the last year at my company, we've gone from 10 to 60 developers, and if they need to go from 10 to 50 salespeople, 40 of those people writing specs for them to sell what they need to sell.
And the follow-up question is, I mean, is the Cucumber code, or what do you call that, the Cucumber specs, that's something that is then going to be handed to the clients?
That, in my opinion, would be for sales to agree on.
Okay.
But at some level, they have to agree on a spec with the client anyway. And so if we can teach them how to teach a client how we're writing these specs, I think that would be really cool.
Because I know I know we have clients that would be, they would be like, a salesperson said like, here's a bunch of Cucumber stuff. They would be like, oh yes. But I know we also have clients that they would be like, I don't know what this is, I don't care.
That's the sales team responsibility to know the client well enough to know which of those that would work with.
Are they then gonna just skip on those clients, or then?
I would hope that we can train them well enough that they will be able to do that without showing them, sort of thing. I mean, if they don't want to show, if they know the client doesn't want to see this cucumber pickle jerkin thing that they don't care about, then don't show it to them. Just know that the spec that they've agreed upon matches what they've written down in Cucumber hand
I can't wait to hear about you getting Cucumber into an actual contract.
That'll be
There's a
fun.
legal contract
You know,
Cucumber test. This is going to be
If the contract that the customer has signed has the Cucumber test in it, I will get permission to redact information and show that on
that'd be
screen
amazing. Please.
when I give this in. If I give this in Q3,
Please.
I will redact the appropriate information and put that on screen.
That's all.
So the thing I was sort of heading with,
Yeah.
because I figured you'd already thought of this, is I wonder if there would be a way to put something together that, here's all the Cucumber, you know, I imagine like putting it into a fax machine that comes out with something that doesn't look like scary code. And probably is not, I don't know, I'm not much of a coder, it's probably not that difficult to do some sort of lexical parser that's
Yeah.
try and just basically just get rid of any of those, you know, just change the font is half the problem.
Change it to switch it over to Times New Roman and put little bullet points on it so it looks nice. And
Yeah,
that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good idea. No, I
Just add
hadn't.
whereas in the beginning of everything.
Yeah, right. So change every given to whereas, every then to. I'll get our legal team on that and have them build that cross-check. Yeah, sorry.
You mentioned that all of these specs will turn into sprint stories.
Yes.
So is there a way to integrate that with test management and sprint and some way to have all the regression and go into...
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I hadn't quite gotten to the level yet, but that'd be really great. I like that idea. Thank you. Presumably, when we get a test, it will be named and tagged correctly. And then once we, as a dev team, get that request, we could add some metadata at the top to say this is the tag, this is the commit, or sorry, this is the ticket number, this is the request that, or this is the merge commit that brought this into master, this is the checkoff, all that stuff. Yeah, that's a really good idea, and I think we could do that. Thank you for mentioning that. Anything else? Okay. Oh.
Maybe you try test-driven approach to the functional tests. Like not with unit tests, but with functional tests.
Functional as in behavioral test?
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
so you write tests like go to some page, right?
Mhm.
But you don't have page. Then create
You mean
page.
writing it in TDD,
Yeah.
starting
Yes.
test first.
Yes, exactly. That is where we're going with this. You've got the nail on the head. When this comes in, we have the behavior, we write it, the first step fails, unit test, to ensure that the first test is implemented in our code, start working on it. Unit test, implement that this feature of the first step, yes, exactly. We would take this to drive our unit level TDD. Yep. Actually, I do want to follow that up on another point. I started writing Cucumber tests after reading Harry Percival is working on a book. It's called Test-Driven Development with Python, and he uses just kind of a Python Django functional test to do this. As I was reading that book, not being a Python developer, I followed along doing the book in Angular, and about that time was when I said, you know, these functional tests look cool, but I'd like a little bit more structure around them, and decided on the Cucumber way. So, yeah, this very much did come out of my experiences with BDD and TDD. Okay. Any more last minute hand raisers flying under the radar? All right, thank you.